Hello and welcome to Ascension Day, a Warhammer 40k podcast focusing on the Gene Stealer cult faction. My name is Gabe and I'm going to be your host for this evening. Today is going to be an episode where we're going to be focusing on learning GSC and how to list build to help you learn. GSC, I think, play very differently than most armies in 40k traditionally, uh, just being very soft units themselves, being T3 single wound with 5-up saves, lack of infills, but whenever they do drop, they punish, they hit hard, they shoot great. Learning GSC is going to be different than learning Space Marines, than learning Necrons in general. So I think it's important that if you are learning GSC, that you kind of set yourself up for success. And I'm going to try and help you do that today. So again, we do have a Discord community that will be in the show notes below. This Discord community will have a premium section where not only will there be more voice and text chats, but there will be the ability to drop lists for list reviews on State of the Cult episode, where I'll take a look at your list, I'll read it out loud, but you'll also have access to be able to ask questions for State of the Cult episodes, and you'll have access to my show notes. So, for instance, today, for this episode, the show notes will include all of the lists that I have for you, as well as a truncated list of the main topics that I'm going to be discussing for each list. So that is $5 US a month, free to join. But there is still join the Discord if you don't want to join the premium, because that's where I'm going to be making all the announcements for future episodes, and you can still have a line of communication with me. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. So first off, to kind of lay the groundwork for how this episode is going to work, I have lists for 1500 or 500, 1000, and 1500 points. This this is kind of a natural progression, I would say, of building the army, whether it be through the combat patrols or through buying lots. Um, you know, I feel like most players will kind of find themselves at these point marks unless they're buying a full 2,000 points immediately. But even then, even if you do have 2,000, 2,500 points of GSC, I think with this army specifically, it kind of makes sense to start off small, lower levels, and kind of work your way up. I think that GSC is an army where you can bite off too much too quickly and lose a lot of games. The army is, even compared to ninth edition, the army is still not incredibly easy to play. So I think pacing yourself, starting off small, limiting the missions and deployments and stuff that you're using will kind of help you put yourself in a good position to naturally learn the army as you build higher points lists and as you build your models. All right, cool. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. So for a 500 points, the list that I have for you guys, and this is just a list that I think that would that I would tell any new player to GSC to build. But this is by no means mandatory. If budget or time or whatever is a constraint to you, then work with what you got. And the after I talk about the list, we'll talk about the reasons why, and those reasons can be applied to other units. So for the 500 points, very simple. We have a Nexus, and a Primus as your two characters. We have a 5-man Acolyte unit with bombs. We have a 10-man Neophyte unit with two seismics and two grenades. And then we have a 10-man unit and another 10-man unit with two seismics, two grenades, and then a 5-man unit of pure strain gene stealers. So what does this list offer you? This list offers you the first kind of taste of what it is to play GSC. You're getting your neophytes, you're getting your acolytes, you're getting your characters who kind of turn them on. With the Primus, you're getting the full rerolls, hit rerolls that you're going to be able to put on an acolyte unit or a neophyte unit as needed. And then for the Nexus, you're going to get access to a perfect ambush for free, which will allow you to spam that stratagem and get used to using that stratagem intelligently. So with a 500 point game, you really shouldn't be playing any particular kind of primary or secondary objectives. Honestly, these games should just be shoot each other. Maybe you can make up your own primary objective, but even when you're playing with a smaller map with like the Strike Force, with the Strike Force kind of map size, it's quite hard to kind of focus on, holding primary and stuff. So I would recommend if you're playing this with a buddy or something, just forego any kind of primary and just focus on moving the models around, shooting each other, seeing how it feels, and seeing how those units function. So again, use your strats, use a perfect ambush, use shadows, use one with the darkness for the lone op rule. And then get used to deep striking. So focus on reusing your neophytes to trigger our detachment ability again, which is on when coming out of reserves until your next fight phase, you get sustained and ignores cover, because that's going to be your primary playbook within GSC, is putting things down, killing something, picking it up again, and reusing those units. So in order to use that stratagem, you cannot be charged. So placement is key, and that's in having these little 10 mans, obviously to meet the constraints of the 500 point limit. You also have putting down 10 models, it's much different than putting down 20. You're able to stake in such a way to fit them in good crevices, and having units this small will kind of help you pre-measure out where potential charges can be coming from. So in in a 500 point game, you shouldn't be expecting too much heavy vehicles. If you have mining lasers and you want to toss them on, that's fine on a neophyte unit. I would say to definitely keep the acolyte unit low, just because a 10-man unit with 4 demos is kind of gonna be overkill in 500 points, and it's better to use those points to kind of spread the wealth and get a little bit more out of the army, because again, you're not playing this necessarily to win any kind of competition, you're playing this to learn the army, so you want to be exposed to as many aspects as possible. So you also see I put in pure strain gene stealers. Pure strains, I think they mimic what aberrants do, um, in the sense that is a melee threat. They don't need any kind of leader within the unit to activate them. They get infiltrate automatically. They do get to re-roll their charges. Um, so having that just built into the unit that has some decent stat lines is great. And for a 5 man, they're cheap. I'd say 85 points for what you get. Each. Sorry, it's not a not not rerolling charge. You get to advance and charge. Sorry about that. So you're getting a 5-up infil, which is super rare in this army. There's not many 5-up infils, even with characters. You're getting a 5-up infil. You get to advance and charge. You get infiltrate, deep strike. Um, they're they're they are using claws and talons, so which is 4 attacks, each hitting on twos. Strength 4, AP 2, single damage. That AP 2 is really nice. That's solid. That means even with Armor of Contempt, you're still putting some AP on. If you're going into Marines or anyone who has Armor of Contempt equivalent stratagems. So out of that unit, you're getting 20 attacks, hitting on twos, probably wounding on fours, threes if you're going into sisters or elves, but probably fours or higher. But again, this is a 500-point game, and you're getting that kind of dual side of the army. The part of the army that's going to be coming up and coming down and deep strike and doing all that stuff, and then a part of the army that's going to be able to start on the board and provide that turn one pressure and presence and hold a place in the field. So that's what I got for you for a 500-point list. Again, that is a Nexus, a Primus, unit of 5 Acolyte hybrids with 2 guys holding bombs, the other 2 with flamers, 2 units of 10 Neophyte hybrids, seismic and grenades, and a 5-man Pure Strain Gene Stealer unit. Alright, cool. We'll get into our 1,000-point list and kind of talk about that. If you guys have any suggestions of any future episodes, please go into the Discord. Leave those suggestions for me. Also, if you have any notes or critiques of the episodes, please leave that in the Discord as well. Personally, I am new to podcasting. I don't have an amazing set. I'm currently recording this episode in a hotel in Africa, so just due to my job flying everywhere. Um, so things aren't going to be, I would say, the best quality, but I am working to upgrade and keep put out a better product for you guys. But yeah, if you guys have any suggestions, please let me know. I'm all ears. All right, cool. Going into 1,000 points, I'm just gonna read off the list first. So in this, we have 3 Primuses. We have Reductus Saboteur. We have a Sanctus for a battle line. We have 2 5-man units of Acolyte hybrids with bombs and flamers. We have 2 20-man of Neophyte hybrids with seismics and grenade launchers. And then a 5-man unit of Gene Stealers. Alright, so immediately we have 385 points of characters, which is for 1,000 points. That's a lot. Reasoning for this is um, Gene Stealer Colts are absolutely turned on by their characters. Acolytes have the abilities to roll without a character in certain situations because they are rerolling ones to hit natively, rerolling ones to wound if the enemy unit they're targeting is on an objective, and then obviously getting sustained whenever they come out deep strike. So they have the ability to kind of, hold their own, but neophytes without characters do not do consistent damage. They absolutely need the help of a Primus if you're using neophytes to do damage. So, given that, you're like, okay, Gabe, well, why do I have three Primuses? Because this does give you the ability to see what a Acolyte unit with a Primus does. But here's what I'll tell you. If you would rather have a bit more punch, or a bit more units on the field, feel free to take one of those Primus units and turn one of those Acolytes into a 10-man, where you're going to get four bombs, four and four flamers. Because four bombs, five flamers, and then the icon. I will say, bring the icon in every unit. Why not? You know, as of right now, here on January 22, 2024, every war gear is free, so there's no reason not to bring the icon to allow you to get some models back. But yeah, if you want to, drop a Primus. You can bring another five acolytes, which you can make a third acolyte unit, or buff one of those up to a 10-man, or you could bring a 10-man units of Neos if you just want to use them to like hold your home field, something like that. So feel free. But I will say experiment with putting Primuses on your acolytes just so you get a feel of what that kind of damage looks like. So we get our first, and then now we're getting our first look at some of our lone app characters. So we have our Reductus Saboteur, and we have our Sanctus. The Reductus Saboteur has the awesome ability of, if you end a move within 12 of her, you roll a dice on a 2-up, she does D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. She only gets to do that once per game, but man, oh man, that is fantastic into some matchups, especially any kind of elf matchup where they're using these small MSU 5-man units, which are all single wound models, to like go do homers or go do engage on all fronts or something, or go do assassinate. They move those, and then you roll that. If you hit a 5 or a 6 on that die, that whole unit's wiped. Assuming that like maybe they have a sergeant with 2 wounds. But if they have a sergeant with only 1 wound within that 5-man, then on a 3-up, that unit is wiped. That's incredible. Even just taking out like a couple of Terminators out of a unit can be huge. So for 65 points, she's very good. Lone Op has stealth. She herself has some great guns. She carries demo charges, which are D6 plus 3 demo charges. So D6 plus 3 demo charges hitting on 2s. That's fantastic. She has assault, which means that she can advance and go do actions. And she just has a lot of good rules going for her for the points. So you're getting the Reductus, and then you're getting the Sanctus, who, um, in terms of rules, isn't nearly as good, but you are getting the ability to kind of play around with another lone op who could just, again, maybe stay on your home objective just to hold it. Or, if for some reason you're playing a game where you don't need to hold your home objective for any particular reason all the time, he can go and score you homers behind enemy lines. And again, is a lone op. So you have to be within 12 to kill him. He does, he does have a very niche, ability with his rules. He is able to shoot and declare a charge in a turn which he advanced or fell back. So that means that he get advance and go do an action. So he essentially has assault. If you take the sniper, and if you take the dagger, he can advance and charge. and he gets to pick a unit at the beginning of the game where that essentially becomes his hunt target. And whenever he makes an attack against that unit, he has ignores cover, devastating wounds. So on his dagger, he has 6 attacks hitting on 2s, strength 3, AP 2, single damage, but anti-infantry 3 and precision. Anti-infantry 3 and precision on his dagger, which means that any kind of character that's, small amount of wounds, 3 wounds, 4 wounds, if he rolls 3 or 4 threes, that character is dead. Right. Unless they have, character's dead. So that's huge. So again, it's a lot more niche, but you're taking him because he's 50 points. He's a 50-point lone op who can just go and do something you need him to do. So with 1,000 points, at this point, definitely start introducing the objectives. Play on a smaller map still. Maybe only limit yourself to only like 3 objectives. So one in each deployment zone, like 1 no man's land. Just so that way you're not spreading yourself too thin. Play tactical. Play your tactical objectives. For many reasons, GSC plays tactical more often than not. We do it well. We play tactical well because we have the ability to come up and come down with the use of stratagems. And then we have some pretty good lone ops that we're able to go send out to go do it as well. And the fact that the entire army has deep strike, which means we could put our guns, anywhere we need to, especially with the fact that we have access to a 3-inch deep strike on a unit for a CP. It makes sense to really be playing tactical. Additionally, we really are a CP hungry army. So being able to kick a card to grab a CP and use that for something else, or use that for a strat, is really nice to have. So get used to playing tactical. When it comes to dropping your units, start thinking of how can I use this unit for as much as it can give me. So how can this unit drop, blow up shoot something, and also score me behind enemy lines, or drop, use like the 3-inch deep strike on a neophyte unit, which it's gonna come down, it's gonna shoot some stuff, and then it's also gonna deny primary or score me primary the next turn. So really get in the headspace of I need to do more than one thing. Or if my unit is only doing one thing, it is something huge, game winning. Like it's gonna blow up the brick that has to die. Start thinking of how your units can have multiple uses when they're coming out of deep strike. And limit test your units. Send in that neophyte unit and see what it does. Send in those pure strains and see what they do. It's really important to know what your limit or what your units can and can't accomplish. And you're only really going to know that by throwing them at different kind of defensive profiles, or armies with different kind of defensive stratagems, or different overwatches. You're only going to know that by sending your army in at those guys and seeing what happens. So, limit test your units. Now is the time to do that. So again, for 1,000 points, our 1,000-point list is Triple Primus, Reductus Saboteur, a Sanctus. I run him with a dagger, but you can run him with a sniper as well. 2 5-man units of acolytes, 2 20-man units of neophytes with seismic and grenades. Again, if you want to take mining lasers, you can. Seismics are just usually the better all-around gun. If you are considering mining lasers, maybe splitting up one of those 20-mans into 2 10-mans and just having 2 mining lasers, but you know, it's not necessarily wrong to take those mining lasers. And then a unit 5-man pure strain gene stealers for the same reason that we took them in 500 points. All right, cool. Let's move on to our 1500 point list. So at 1500 points, we have a Biophagus with Inscrutable Cunning, which is the enhancement that allows this model's unit to gain the Infiltrate keyword, and then anytime you spend CP on them, on a 4-up, you get that CP back, or you get 1 CP back. You have 3 Primuses and 1 Reductus Saboteur. We have 1 10-man unit of Acolyte Hybrids with bombs and flamers, 1 5-man unit of Acolyte Hybrids with bombs and flamers, 3 20-man units of Neophyte Hybrids, 1 5-man unit of Aberrants, and Achilles Ridge Runner with the Mortar. And I think in this particular case, it will be, it's gonna, I'd say, the Mortar and the Survey Auger. I think if you had 2, you could do like the Mortar and the Spotter for the +1 ballistic skill. Actually, you know what? I would leave that up to you. The Spotter is going to give you the +1 ballistic skill. The Survey Auger is going to give you ignores cover, but you're already going to get ignores cover when you come in from Deep Strike. So up to you. But I personally run it with the Auger when I'm only going to run 1. So anyway, let's go through this list. So we have our Biophagus. He is going to be attaching to our Aberrants. The Biophagus is really, really good. He makes Aberrants just go incredibly, incredibly hard. So he's giving whatever unit he attaches to lethal. He gives whatever unit attaches to a once per game anti-infantry 2-up. So no matter what you're swinging into, you're going to be wounding on 2s. And then once per game, he gives himself +3 attack and +3 damage. So he himself will have 4. He's going to have 4 attacks. He'll be hitting on 3s. If you use the +1, or if you use the anti-infantry 2-up, or actually he has anti-infantry 2-up all the time, so he'll be hitting on 3s. Into infantry, he'll be wounding on 2s. It is AP0, but it'll be D3 +3 damage. So that can be really nice to just have to, if you're just trying to burst a unit down, to have that damage just in the wind waiting. So he's, like I said, he's going to be attaching to the Aberrants to really pump them up. We have 3 Primuses for the same reason we have 3 Primuses in the 1,000 points. I will say at this point, I would not be dropping any Primuses. Again, this list isn't necessarily you trying to min-max the army. This list is you trying to learn the army. We are learning the army with these lists. We're not trying to go in LVO with them. And a Reductus Saboteur. So in this list, we do not have the 2 lone ops, but we do have an extra unit of neophytes who can kind of, you know, if they're not being used to shoot something, can fill in the role. And honestly, you could always you could almost always find a use for neophytes in terms of them being able to shoot something. Even if they're not going to kill something, just being able to take pot shots on a rhino. You never know. You know, if 3 or 4 seismic shots get through, you know, and you roll a bunch of 5 and 6s for the damage, you just, you know, casually did like 9, 12 wounds on a rhino, which could be huge. So, you know, we losing that Sanctus, but having that extra neophyte unit is very good. So we do have a 10-man of acolytes. That's going to be the standard amount that you'll see most people take, is that 10-man. That's the spooky unit that we have. A 10-man acolyte unit is the thing that everyone is saving their Overwatch for. Everyone is measuring out those 3-inch deep strikes for. Because they know that when that thing comes down and it deep strikes 3 inches, if it throws those bombs, and especially if you use perfect ambush, and especially if you have a Primus for full hit rerolls, it's just gonna almost kill almost anything that they touch in terms of a single unit. So now you get to play with the big gun. You get to kind of really limit test that unit. You have a 5-man, that'll be more of you know, less tough infantry, less models, um, but still have the ability to inflict a lot of damage on something. And then neophytes, uh, triple neophytes is what you will primarily see if you are taking aberrants. You usually won't see too many more. Some people will maybe drop a unit of acolytes for an extra unit of neophytes. I would say that is a bit more meta specific in terms of what kind of tournament you're going to and who's going to be there and the kind of armies you're expecting to fight. But I would say the 3 neophyte units that you'll see that all the way up into 2,000 points. We have a 5-man unit of aberrants. Our aberrants are absolutely our hardest hitting melee that we have. They are, and not only do they hit hard, they are incredibly hard to kill. So each aberrant has 3 swings if you're taking the hammer, which everyone's going to be taking the hammer. You know, even if he's holding a pick, you know, on the sheet, he's taking a hammer. It's 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 8, AP 2, flat 3 damage. Man, that can just absolutely hurt whatever. Because even if they are, you know, wounding like a knight or a land raider or a rhino on 5s, every 5 that goes through AP2, which most people don't have a great way of dealing with mitigating AP in melee, in terms of like giving cover or like knights, you know, rotating ion shield. Um, every 5 that goes through and sticks is flat 3 damage, which is huge. The aberrants can absolutely punch above their weight, and again, they're very tanky. So if they are being led by a character, if they are a bodyguard unit, if whatever is attacking them, if their strength is higher than the aberrant's toughness, which is T6, they are -1 to wound. So that means all of the time, unless the army is shooting you with +1 to wound or like anti-infantry 2-up, they are wounding you on 3s at the bare max, or at the maximum. At the max, they are wounding you on 3s unless they have some other way of putting on an extra +1 to wound. So, and then they also have a 4-up feel no pain. So T6, 3 wounds, 4-up feel no pain, -1 to wound if strength is higher than their toughness. They hit like a truck, and the Biophagist is going to give them lethal. So, which even which turns them into being able to beat up on like elite infantry, like Terminators really well. Now they're beating up on tanks really well because every 6 that you roll is gonna be lethal, which means that that 3 damage is sticking if they don't save the AP2 save. So I think moving from the pure strain to the aberrants, you are gonna get what the pure strain was giving you. You're gonna be getting something that's a lot better. So originally we're putting in those pure strains to kind of have that board presence, that infiltrate presence that's gonna already be up the board, like sitting on objective. Now you have something that is much harder to kill and can dish out a lot more damage. So they are expensive. So 5-man unit is 185 points. They're very expensive, but I think especially in a 1500 point game, your opponent is not going to be bringing everything. Unless someone is taking specifically for GSC, I think that this is going to be, you'll find that they'll do well for you. And then finally we have the Achilles Ridge Runner. So the Achilles Ridge Runner is a very good tech piece that the GSC have. While it's not doing a lot of damage, the gun that you're bringing on there is the Heavy Mortar, which is D6 plus 3, hitting on 4, strength 6, 0, 8, AP 0, 1 damage, with blast and indirect fire. It's not hitting that particularly hard. What you're bringing the Ridge Runner for is the Crossfire, which is each time this unit has shot, select one enemy unit that was hit by one of those more attacks by this unit in this phase. Till the end of the phase, each Genestealer unit, Genestealer Cult unit that attacks that target that was struck by the Ridge Runner, you get +1 AP. When you're taking the Survey Augur, you get Ignores Cover as well. If you're taking the Spotter, you get +1 to your ballistic skill. So instead of hitting on 5s with indirect, you're hitting on 4s with indirect. So the reason why I say using the Survey Augur if you only have 1, which I would say in a 1500 point game you're really only gonna have 1, is because you want to use that survey or that Ridge Runner for everything you can squeeze out of it in terms of the most amount of abilities that are going to proc. So not only are you going to be getting that +1 AP, but you're also going to be ignoring the cover, which is good for, let's say, a neophyte unit that you weren't able to bring up due to it holding primary for you, or due to whatever reason not having the AP, whatever. That unit can still shoot and ignore cover into whoever it's shooting at. If you have 2, then you can start using, like, if you only need it +1 AP on one particular unit, that other Ridge Runner can be shooting chaff. So in that case, maybe you have one with Survey Augur, one with the Spotter, so that one with Spotter is just there to just clear like cultists on objective or whatever, just put some downrange or put some indirect fire downrange. But I think in this particular case, having the Survey Augur might serve you a bit better. But yeah, this list, I'd say, gives you a good look at a very holistic, standard GSC list. All that's going to really change once you get to 2,000 points is, you're going to get more Acolyte hybrids. You'll put those aberrants to a 10-man, give yourself another Achilles, and then maybe another character, and then boom, that's 2,000 points. So this is very close to what you're actually going to be using at a tournament, or something along that line. So I would say, use this list will serve you well in teaching you like 2,000 points of GSC while still keeping capping out the the stuff that you're gonna be seeing. So definitely learn how to use the Ridge Runner. How can that Crossfire token help me the most? The ideal scenario is you're going to use a perfect ambush on like one target and use the Ridge Runner on another. Or if you want perfect ambush and the Ridge Runner, you can stack +1 AP twice. So you have, you'll be all of a sudden your demo charges that only have +2 AP are now have +4, ignoring cover. Anything with a 3-up, unless they have access to Armor of Contempt, does not have a save, which is huge, huge. So yeah, using that Ridge Runner, concentrate on primary scoring and primary denial. So not only, again, with GSC having a limited amount of units because of our high cost, only having a limited amount of units, your units need to be doing multiple jobs. You can't just be like, I'm going to drop this and kill something and that's all it's going to do. You will not win games. You will not win games. We are not a turn to drop, kill everything, win the game faction anymore. Just due to the fact we can't use our 3-inch Deep Strike stratagem twice. We can't use our lone op stratagem twice, and due to the fact that all of our units are much more expensive and they don't automatically come back with Cult Ambush. You have to roll that dice now. And I can't tell you how many times I've lost Acolytes or Neophytes on turn 1 or turn 2, and I've rolled 1s and 2s on that Cult Ambush roll. So that Cold Ambush rule for us now is a nicety. It is something that, like, if you're playing a 50-50 game, it's that thing that can maybe tip you over the edge, but it's not something you can depend on. So you have to think of, how can my unit do multiple things? And this is why, like, at this point, you have 60 Neophytes. Think about, all right, I'm going to drop this Neophyte unit. Okay, it's going to shoot this unit. And then, because I have the OC on here, because, it's battle line, each Neophyte model is OC2. Come the command phase of my opponent, they're not going to be getting primary on this objective. So that's kind of what you have to be thinking. Same thing with Acolytes. Acolytes usually consume your 3-inch Deep Strike the most. I mean, I use a play on Neophytes, but they're the ones who are going to be using it the most. So, same thing. These guys are going to drop down. I'm going to string them out. A couple dudes are going to be on the point, which, maybe the only thing that's on there is like a Rhino, which is OC3. So I got 2 guys on the point, that's OC4. I denied him primary. I blew up, their Terminator squad or whatever. I'm doing 2 things at once, and that's kind of how you have to, how you have to think for you to succeed with Gene Stealer Cult in this meta. Try to get the full worth of your Neos, so multiple activations. So that's dropping, shooting something to death, using shadows to come back up. The same thing that we talked about at our 500 points. You want to be fine tuning that skill, because that is a skill. reusing neophytes, reusing all of our fragile GSC units is absolutely a skill. 1 second. So at this point, at this 1500 point, um, we're gonna want to fine tune that skill. So that brings me back to the point of, getting the most out of your units. Try and get those neophytes, having a couple drops within a game, or in such a way that they'll drop and, still be able to do damage or do what they need to do even without the sustain, just relying on like the Primus rules. And finally, now you really want to punish mistakes of your opponent. So, can you 3-inch deep strike a neophyte unit to move block, units that they may want to use next turn to like score homers, or they left you a little spot in their back line for you to string out some acolytes to drop an Acco Bomb. GSC is a punish army. They succeed by punishing the mistakes of your opponent. And that's just due to the fact that they topple very easily. GSC, once they start getting shot at, we have very few sources of feel no pains. We have to religiously spam stratagems like our lone op stratagem, like go to ground, to just be able to survive. Because if anyone, really starts putting firepower into our units, they're gonna just topple over and die. So what we do is we allow our opponent to put themselves in a bind to make mistakes, or we use units like aberrants to make them overcommit to force those mistakes, and then we capitalize on them. And we capitalize them by dropping acolytes. We're also able to deny primary by dropping neophytes, who are also able to move block. So really start to focus on just punishing your opponent and their mistakes, and being able to kind of dismantle their plan. All right, so that's our 1500 point list. Again, that's a Biophagus with Inscrutable Cunning. That's a triple Primus, a Reductus Saboteur, a 10-man unit of Acolytes with bombs, a 5-man unit of Acolytes with bombs, 3 20-man units of Neophyte Hybrids, all with guns or seismic guns and grenades, 5-man unit of Aberrants, and Achilles Ridge Runner with a mortar. So that puts us at 1490. Sorry, that's not 1500 points. It is what it is. It'll be okay. And yeah, so this is what I would give to anyone who is trying to learn the army as a stepping stone, as a gradual. Here's a couple more tools to use. Here's a couple more strategies to play with as you learn the army. And hopefully you have a game store or meta, or like even specific opponents that are like able to be understanding with like takebacks, and be like, hey man, I totally forgot I shot you with a Ridge Runner, because there's GSC are similar to like AdMech, in the sense of you have a lot of rules that you have to play around with, that you have to consider, and all of those rules all interact. So that's why we have these lists built the way that we did, to give you tools but not to overwhelm you. Alright, again, I'm going to be posting these lists in the Discord under show notes. these show notes is going to be a part of the subscription portion of the Discord. Again, it's $5 USD. I'm going to be using that money initially to kind of buy some microphones and kind of beef up the quality of the Discord, just so that way I can attempt to make this a zero cost hobby in the, amongst all my not so zero cost hobbies, most importantly being 40K. um, but if you don't want to subscribe, that's fine, man. That's a-okay. Still, please join the Discord, be a part of the community. We have a general chat channel there that you can hop on. And again, all of my announcements are going to be made using the Discord for future episodes. Hey, tell your friends. Tell if you have someone who's interested in starting to learn GSC. You know, while I am kind of also catering to people who are trying to be more competitive, I think everything I talked about is good for people who just want to play casual, but just don't want to get absolutely smashed. So, because playing GSC is super easy to just get obliterated. But anyway, wish you guys the best of luck in your games. If you have any critiques or anything, please let me know in the Discord. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you.